Is that the sound of respect, or just a mop squeaking under the flag rope click? They mocked the old janitor, the silver coin slipping from his sleeve, and the room went still. In that silence, the coin hit tile with a single bright heartbeat, light flashing off the flag, like a salute remembered. Still, quiet men leave echoes too. Let me take you back. Morning sunlight leaked through the tall glass of the maintenance hall at Robins Air Force Base, washing everything in a soft amber. The faint hum of a floor buffer rolled like a lazy tide against the tile. It was Memorial Day 2020, a quiet base morning. Flags lined the fence outside, crisp and red-white-blue snapping in the Georgia wind. Inside Samuel Carver, the janitor moved slowly across the floor. His mop glided in patient arcs, the smell of disinfectant mixing with metal and dust. 82 years old, slight stoop back straight anyway. The kind of man who still wore his cap square even with no one around to notice. The big double doors opened with a pressurized sigh. Colonel Michael Henderson stepped in crisp uniform, polished shoes, striking the tile like punctuation. He glanced once at the streak of water near the flag display and frowned. Wet floor under Old Glory, really? His tone wasn't cruel, just clipped the sort of automatic authority that didn't think twice. Samuel straightened, nodded once. Yes, sir. I'll get it. He bent to wipe the small puddle. The rag slipped from his hand, and something else fell too, a silver coin, small but heavy, spinning once before hitting the floor with a sharp, clean ting. The colonel's gaze followed the sound. The coin lay face up in the strip of sunlight, its edges worn but bright enough to flash. He crouched, picked it up between two fingers. Cute souvenir old man Samuel's hand froze on the mop handle. He didn't flinch or smile. He simply looked up, pale eyes, steady, calm. It was once a call sign. The room went still. Somewhere outside, a flag clattered softly on its pole. Inside, the hum of the buffer faded into silence. A bead of water rolled down the coin's surface, catching the light. It threw a brief, trembling reflection onto the nearby flag like a heartbeat. The colonel's brow creased. You used to earn that call sign, once Samuel said quietly, his voice no louder than the air. A long time ago. For a moment, neither man moved. The faint smell of wax and lemon cleaner hung between them, sharp as memory. Then the colonel placed the coin back on the counter with a small metallic tap, a gesture more dismissive than angry. You'd better dry that floor. He turned and walked away, boots echoing down the corridor, metals faintly chiming with each step. Samuel remained still for a long time, watching the door close. He knelt, picked up the coin carefully, and held it under the light. The letters Eagle 7 caught a final glint before disappearing into his palm. He slipped it back into his pocket. Outside, the wind shifted the flag's shadow across his face, red, then white, then blue. He whispered almost to himself. Still flying, huh? And the hum of the buffer started again, low and steady like the quiet return of duty. The afternoon light thinned to a pale silver inside the maintenance supply room. It was a narrow place, bare shelves, metal walls, and the hum of a single fluorescent lamp that buzzed like an old memory. From outside came the deep, steady rhythm of aircraft engines testing on the tarmac. Samuel Carver sat on a wooden stool, a paper cup of lukewarm coffee beside him. His hands dry and lined like old maps turned the silver coin over and over. It caught the cold light and flickered against the steel wall, a heartbeat in metal. Somewhere in the static hum of the lamp, another sound seemed to surface, a voice from decades ago, crisp through an old radio headset. Eagle 7, you're clear to land. He could almost feel the vibration of the cockpit floor, the way the oxygen mask pressed against his face. A younger hand his had given a thumbs up to another pilot across the formation. The boy behind the visor grinned, sunlight flashing off his canopy. Then the memory dissolved back into the smell of cleaning fluid and the far-off groan of a transport plane rolling down the runway. The door creaked open. Permission to enter, Chief of Sanitation. It was Clara Reeves, the base clinic nurse, retired Army Medical Corps, early 60s, all warmth and gentle sarcasm. She carried 2 steaming cups. Samuel blinked away the haze. "Afternoon, Clara. Brought reinforcements." She handed him a cup. "They say you keep this place flying, Sam." He chuckled softly, a dry sound. "I just keep it from falling apart." She leaned against the doorway, studying him. "You know that colonel strutting around this morning, Henderson, funny thing?" Samuel looked up. The name alone made the air feel heavier. Funny how Clara took a careful sip of her coffee. "Back in my Med Corps days, I worked a short rotation in Germany. Captain Carver's unit was stationed nearby. Henderson was one of his junior officers." Samuel's hand froze mid-turn. The coin balanced between his fingers. The silver edge flashed once under the flickering light like a signal. "Captain Carver," he said quietly. "That's a name I haven't heard in a long time." Clara's brow furrowed. "Sam, you are—" He gave a slow shake of the head, a small tired smile. "Doesn't matter now. Not since they stopped using call signs like mine." She set her cup down beside his. The 2 cups steamed together, white threads of heat drifting up into the dim room. "Some call signs never really fade, you know," she said softly. "Not the real ones." A silence settled between them, the comfortable kind, heavy but not sad. The clock ticked. The mop leaned against the wall, its handle tapping gently as if marking time. Samuel turned the coin again, and the reflection painted a small arc of light across the wall. Eagle 7 glinting faintly in motion. He looked at it for a long moment, then slipped it into his shirt pocket, close to his chest. "Maybe," he said, "maybe some things just wait to be remembered." Outside, another aircraft lifted off its low thunder, shaking dust from the rafters. The nurse smiled and gave his shoulder a friendly pat before heading out. "See you at the memorial service, Sam. Try not to polish the whole base before then." He smiled back, faint but real. When she left, the door swung slowly shut, and the room grew still again, just the hum of the light, the smell of coffee cooling, and the steady echo of flight outside. It was long past taps. The base admin wing slept under fluorescent shadows, every corridor still except for the low hum of air vents and the distant, tired cry of a nightbird somewhere outside the hangar. In his small office, Colonel Michael Henderson sat alone at his desk collar, opened the screen's blue light, painting fine lines across his face. The cursor blinked against the dark window of a classified archive search. He hesitated, then typed Eagle 7, Captain Samuel Dean Carver. The system stalled for a second, then produced a scan, a black and white photo from decades earlier. A young pilot grinned at the camera helmet tucked under one arm, the other hand holding up a coin. The edges of that coin were unmistakable silver, scarred and engraved with the same 2 words now echoing in Henderson's head. "Eagle 7, he whispered. His voice cracked slightly. The hum of the vent filled the silence that followed a mechanical heartbeat. Henderson leaned closer, his reflection flickering faintly in the monitor, 2 versions of himself, divided by time and guilt. He scrolled. The personnel file stopped short after a few lines. Special Operations. Declassified Section NA. Most of it was blacked out. But one small note remained. Status retired. Location Robbins AFB Facilities Contract. He sat back hard, the chair creaking. All this time. The thought finished itself in his throat. The door to his office opened with a soft click. Burning the midnight oil, Colonel. He turned. Clara Reeves stood there holding a folder, her expression calm but knowing. The desk light threw a gold halo along her silver hair. Couldn't sleep, he said. Had to check something. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Sometimes, she said gently, the janitor keeps the keys you lost. Her tone wasn't teasing. It carried that quiet kind of reverence nurses acquire the knowledge that everyone bleeds the same. Henderson looked back to the glowing screen. The young man in the photo was laughing, sun in his eyes. For a moment, the colonel could almost hear the rotors, the coded chatter, the smell of dust and jet fuel rising from faraway runways. A small metallic object lay on his desk. The cleaning staff must have left it there earlier that evening. A maintenance tag, circular and worn smooth with faint initials scratched into the back. He turned it over absent-mindedly, and the reflected light caught the photograph just so. For a heartbeat, the glint from tag to photo, aligned coin to coin, past to present. A file on the printer tray stirred under the vent's breath, a loose page fluttering like it wanted to escape. Henderson reached out, pressed it flat with one palm, and stared at the name again. Captain Samuel Dean Carver. The hum of the air conditioner stopped suddenly, one of those moments when even machines seem to hold their breath. He whispered again, softer this time. He checked the name one last time. The screen dimmed into sleep, leaving only the faint light from the hallway cutting a narrow path across the desk. Saturday morning came bright and wind-clean, the kind of sky that seemed scrubbed for ceremony. The Veterans Week commemoration spread across the old runway at Robbins Air Force Base, rows of folding chairs, a brass band warming up children holding tiny flags. The air smelled of jet fuel and cut grass of memory. At the podium, Colonel Michael Henderson read from the prepared notes on the lectern. His voice carried over the loudspeakers, steady, professional, but his eyes wandered across the crowd, searching. On this day, we honor the quiet service of those who kept the engines running, the skies safe, the colors bright. He stopped mid-sentence. Beyond the first row of veterans near the edge of the tarmac stood Samuel Carver. The old janitor's uniform was clean, but faded to the color of dust. He held a folded rag in one hand, a small silver coin in the other. He wasn't part of the official seating. He was just there near the flagpole he polished every morning. A few in the crowd whispered and chuckled softly, an old man with a mop at a military ceremony. Someone muttered, "Guess he missed the cleaning schedule." Henderson's throat tightened. The sound of their laughter scraped something raw inside him. He set the papers down. The microphone caught the faint tremor in his breath as he said, "Excuse me for a moment." Then he stepped down from the stage. The band's idle notes faded. The wind fell away. Even the flags seemed to pause in mid-flutter. Boots clicked on the asphalt 1, 2, 3 until the colonel stopped in front of the janitor. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then loud enough for the front row to hear Henderson straightened heels together, the sunlight glinting off his medals. His right hand rose in a crisp salute sharp enough to cut the quiet. "Eagle 7, permission to stand down." The words hung in the air like a signal flare. Samuel blinked. For a moment his lips trembled and his shoulders rose in a slow, steady breath. He brought his hand halfway up, not to return the salute exactly, but to cover his heart. "Permission granted, sir," he said softly. The crowd froze. The hush was complete, an ache of understanding spreading through it. A boy in the second row dropped his flag. It landed without a sound. Samuel's eyes shone not with pride but with the recognition of a burden finally set down. The narrator's voice would have called it this way. He was pinned by protocol, but freed by respect. The moment stretched a living photograph. Sunlight burst across the silver coin in his palm, and the reflection lanced up toward the flag's stripes fluttering above them. One by one, the audience rose to their feet. A few veterans in worn caps raised their own hands in salute, silent and firm. The bandmaster lowered his baton, eyes wet behind dark glasses. Then the world exhaled. The wind moved again, lifting the banners carrying the slow rhythm of distant drums. Henderson lowered his hand, nodded once, an order completed, an old debt repaid. He whispered, "Welcome home, Captain." Samuel smiled faintly, that old pilot's calm returning for just a second. "Been home a long time, son." The band began again, quiet at first, then swelling. And somewhere above them, the sunlight caught the moving flag, scattering light, like fragments of the past being folded and put away. A week later, the base library smelled faintly of dust and new coffee. Morning sunlight filtered through tall windows, sliding across the bulletin board by the entrance. Among flyers for blood drives and holiday bake sales, a fresh printout had been pinned near the top. It showed a photo of a silver coin, the same one that had glimmered in a veteran's hand under the flag. Below it, in shaky black marker, someone had written, "Eagle 7 Carvin Honored." The spelling was wrong, but the sentiment was pure. Samuel Carver stood there a long moment reading the caption. His reflection wavered in the glass that covered the board. The edges of the photo trembled slightly under the air vent as if alive. He chuckled under his breath. Guess rank never tells the whole story. The library was nearly empty. A few young maintenance staffers passed behind him, whispering. He caught only fragments, words like Colonel Salute Legend. It felt strange to be a story instead of the storyteller. From the hallway came the sound of laughter and the familiar clatter of silverware. In the mess hall, the smell of bacon and brewed coffee wrapped around the room. Young airmen crowded around tables, voices low but curious. "He's the janitor, right?" one said. "Yeah," another replied, but they said the colonel saluted him, like full salute. Their disbelief had the tone of awe, not mockery. At a quiet table near the corner, Samuel stirred his coffee, letting the spoon clink softly against the mug. Across from him, Clara Reeves placed her tray down and sat with a small smile. "They finally see you," she said. He looked up from the swirling black surface, eyes kind. "They see everyone who served Clara." "That's enough." She grinned, still humble. "Figures." He smiled back, faint humor in his voice. "Old habits, harder to clean than the floors." She laughed, the sound like sunlight on tin. Around them, conversation moved on to duty rosters, weekend plans, base gossip. The story of Eagle 7 had already started to fold into legend, as stories do when the right people decide to remember. A chair scraped somewhere behind them, the brief squeal of wood on tile marking the quiet beat that followed laughter. Samuel leaned back, sipping his coffee. Through the cafeteria window, the flag outside caught the wind again, its motion reflected in the metal rim of his cup. The silver winked, then faded. "Good coffee," he murmured, "strong enough to keep ghosts awake." Clara rolled her eyes, smiling. "Careful. You'll start charging rent for them." He laughed softly. "Not my style. I just keep the lights on." The hum of voices filled the room again, gentle, alive. For the first time in years, Samuel didn't feel invisible. He just felt part of the noise. The evening light lay soft over Warner Robins, turning the base housing rows into gold and quiet. Cicadas had started early, their low chorus blending with the rattle of the porch screen in the breeze. Samuel Carver sat on the porch swing, one boot tucked under the other, watching the sunlight catch the edge of a silver coin on the small table beside him. The coin's surface reflected the sky, half blue, half fading amber. The day had been long. Letters, handshakes, more gratitude than he knew what to do with. All of it kind, all of it a little too much. Now only the quiet remained, the kind of quiet he'd always trusted most. The gate squeaked. Eli Tran, the young aircraft tech who'd worked the night shifts with him, stepped onto the porch. He carried 2 cans of soda, awkwardly formal. "Hope I'm not intruding, Mr. Carver. Not unless you're here to make me work overtime." Eli laughed and sat beside him, placing the cans down. They had a meeting today. Maintenance staff voted to rename Bay 2. They're calling it the Carver Hangar. Samuel smiled faintly, eyes on the horizon. "That'll confuse the GPS." Eli grinned, but his gaze drifted to the coin gleaming in the dim light. "Is that the one, the famous Eagle 7? Samuel picked it up, turned it between his fingers. The worn engraving caught the last edge of the sun. "Famous doesn't belong to things like this," he said softly. "It belongs to what they remind you of." He held it out toward Eli. "Keep it. Remind yourself what quiet looks like." Eli hesitated. I can't take that." "Sure you can." "It's just metal," Samuel said. Then after a beat and memory, "You take care of both." The coin settled in the young man's palm with a light clink. The sound was small but carried weight. From inside, the screen door opened. Clara Reeves stepped out holding a dish towel and wearing that same half-smile that carried both pride and affection. "You finally let them say thank you, neighbor." Samuel looked her way, his eyes kind. Didn't let them. Just stopped running from it. Eli turned the coin under his thumb, the engraved wings glowing gold in the dying light. So he said quietly, "The Colonel still salutes Eagle 7. Samuel leaned back, his silhouette outlined in orange light. He smiled, the kind of smile that held whole decades behind it. "Maybe we all should, son." The screen door tapped shut behind Clara. The curtain inside shifted as the wind moved through, carrying the faint smell of coffee and cut grass. The camera would pan from Samuel's porch to the flagpole at the edge of the yard. The last of the sunlight brushed the flag, and its reflection rippled across the coin in Eli's open hand. Then came the silence, the good kind, the kind that felt like a salute returned. If this story moved you, a gentle narrator would say, share it forward. The sound of the curtain fluttering blended with the faint rush of wings overhead as the screen faded to gold. The porch light glowed like a low beacon against the Georgia dusk, and the flag outside drifted in slow rhythm with the crickets. Samuel Carver sat quiet, his chair creaking every few breaths, watching Eli Tran polish the old Eagle 7 coin before placing it in a small shadow frame for the base museum. Some stories didn't end, they settled like dust after takeoff. Still, he smiled at the thought of how far a single gesture could travel. Kindness, he figured, moved on its own frequency, steady as a radio signal no one ever quite turned off. Out there, people were still talking about that salute, replaying it like a hymn. On the frame's brass tag, a line was etched simple and true. Eagle 7, permission to stand down.